9 o'clock, we'll go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Planning Organization Board for Friday, December 12th. If you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll go ahead and call the roll.
Here.
Pendergrass.
Here.
Hammond.
Here.
Lehman. Here. Kilrain.
Here.
Taduce. Here. Reinke.
Here.
Long.
Here.
King.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Carr. Here. Gibson.
Here.
Ribble. Here. We have four.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and take public comments on the consent agenda items. Is there any comment? Seeing none, do we have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. We'll go ahead and take public comments on each public hearing item and new business item. We'll start with the adoption of the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan Summary Report. Don?
So yes, we will go through, I got a presentation I'll go through, and then I know we have some public comments. Some of the public comments have been copied and put out in front of you as well, besides being emailed to you earlier. So essentially, for anybody newer in the process, we started out with the goals and objectives, so pretty much the same as last time. Obviously, the part in the bottom is the most important part of it because you got to get to the cost feasible projects. Unfortunately, this time, the state and federal money, well, the state side of it was way down from a revenue standpoint, and that's impactive and is addressing some of the comments later on that you'll hear. So it's really a major update of the 2045. Over the next couple of years, we'll probably amend it a couple more times. We did with the 2045 as well. I think it was amended 5 times between. Not always for bad things. Sometimes things are pulled out, but sometimes, a lot of times there are, grant money gets put to projects, things like that, so we add that back in again. So these are the plan goals that were identified way back in the early process of it. These are the goals that we follow as part of our federal requirements, planning factors. So public engagement. We had a virtual meeting room, which we had about 375 visitors since May. We did get some positive comments on that. Actually, we mirrored that off of CNFDOT, used that before. You can go in and you can hit each of the items, whatever you're interested in, and make some comments along the way. We had an online survey where it had 307 responses, 2 public meetings, one in May and one in October, presentations at 9 community meetings, Metropolitan Advisory Committee meeting updates, and then also social media and news coverage as well. So this is the forecasted growth through 2050. Obviously, raising 57% increase in population and 38% increase in jobs. One of the things we will be doing over the next year is actually modeling build out as part of what we had put in the planning study, the planning money from the last meeting we had. And we'll see what the results of that are and what the build-out population is. So identification of the roadway needs is the first part of that. Obviously, based on current and future congestion and what comes out of the regional travel model, I will say that, it used to be where the regional travel model dictated everything that was in there. I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years that you can't put every project in there. When the needs get to be, 10 times what your cost feasible is, it gets kind of ridiculous out of that part of it. Consideration of environmental impacts, prioritization based on the goals, and away we go. So this is the existing MPO priority projects. So when we come in June, our priority list, this is kind of where they're falling in there. Obviously, some of these were not where we want them to be. For instance, some of them like US 41 and 6 Mile Cypress probably had it through construction last time. We do have some right-of-way in there. Design is now in 2031 to 2035, but you're going to hear that project later in the meeting, but to get sign-off of that PD&E, we have to have design programmed. US 41 at Bonita Beach, that is one that actually got through construction in 2050, but it's a few and far between when you start talking about the state roads that aren't SIS facilities. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Burnstone Road, 2036 to 2040, State Road 78 from Burnstone to US 41. The design in 2031 to 2035, same issues, not enough money for all the right-of-way, and construction's not in the cost feasible plan. State Road 31 from State Road 80 to 78, construction is actually, it's listed in 26 to 30 in that block, but it's in fiscal year 2029. Cape Coral Bridge, that's construction coming up soon. The countywide advanced traffic management system, we put construction in 2031 to 2035. A portion of it has actually been funded by FDOT in the 5-year work program, so we're going to have to try to find funding to match with that, and that will come with, not from just us, we'll be looking at the county as well. And the last one I listed on here is the Fowler Street, Evans Avenue, south of Hanson to MLK. That's been around for a really long time. It has a, it had a PD&E study that was done before where it was going to be a one-way pair. That was kind of pushed back on. It has kind of an unbalanced look right now where it might be 2 lanes south, 1 lane north on Fowler, and then the reverse on Evans. It still needs to have a PD&E study, though, to change that, and also a lot of drainage improvements that FDOT has been talking about that might be around the $50 million range. Travel model needs, this is based on the E+, the existing plus committed, so you'll see that there are some projects that aren't included in there. Essentially what is in over the next 5 years. The red areas are areas of concern, so are orange when you think about it, and even yellow when you start approaching 1.0. Your volume to capacity, where your volume is the same as what your capacity of the road. So this is what ended up being in the needs plan as part of the process. Obviously, a lot more than we could afford. So transit corridor ranking, these were the corridors that were identified as that, and we're also giving to the TDP, and you'll see a presentation on that later on. That was based on community input, land uses, ridership demand, transit level of service, sidewalk and trail density, because being able to get to the bus stop is very important for people using transit, and safety. This is what's in the transit needs. When you see the TDP presentation come up, it'll be a little bit different. Like the mobility on demand areas, for instance, like in Cape Coral, will be a smaller area. They'll start out at smaller areas, but they go through the first 10 years, and this goes through 2050. Public comments on the needs, that was from the May meeting. Questions about the timing of LECO extension, safety concerns over lack of lighting on San Carlos Boulevard, traffic circle concept proposed at Del Prado and Cape Coral Parkway, support for expansion of transit service, and mixed reviews regarding growth forecasts too high or too low, which I remember saying that before. Well, that sounds like it's just right. It's right in the middle. Some people think it's too low. Some people think it's too high. Cost feasible projects, we ended up getting reconstruction within the 2050 timeframe of 11 bridges, 12 major intersections or an overpass at a location, construction of 10 new roadways, 27 roadway widenings, and reconfiguration or modifications of 4 roadway corridors. That's, for instance, like the Fowler Evans I'm talking about, where you're reusing the lanes there. There might be a rebuild where you're going from a 2 to a 3 lane, things like that. Cost feasible transit, so this is where it gets cut down a little bit more, but still more than what you'll see in the TDP. The TDP is really what you follow over the next 10 years. So we try to follow that the first 10 years, and then what might happen beyond that in the long-range plan. Bicycle pedestrian projects is a big focus with the Sun Trail, the regional corridors, obviously, and some of those things have just come up, for instance, out on Lover's Key, where that project is by design with the county. But there are 38 miles of sidewalks and bike lanes and shared use paths within the list as well. So then we had, in October, we had the public comments on the cost feasible plan. Comments we got were support for improvements to mitigate traffic in downtown, concerns over the timing of projects, widening of State Road 78, Bay Shore, east of I-75 to State Road 31. Also the interchange, I didn't put that there, but that is also something that was a concern. Widening of US 41 north of State Road 80, State Road 31 bridge over the Coosatchee River, interchange improvements. You talk about anybody, anywhere. Bonita Beach, I've gotten a lot of comments about Bonita Beach and I-75. Unfortunately, those things are much later in the program and not actually funded all the way through construction at this point. Support for expansion of transit service and support for Sun Trail. The one thing I didn't put on here, we did have some folks that came and I'm getting, like every 2 or 3 days, I'm getting a comment, not necessarily directed to the long-range plan, but with the I-75 project where it's widening the 10 lanes, they're requesting noise wall for, what came out of the study was a shorter segment of it. They're requesting noise walls for a longer segment. I think you'll hear more for public comment at the next meeting from that. Public comments on the cost feasible plan. Besides that, since that time, essentially, since the meeting, request to move the Big Cypress extension from the needs plan. That was one where I said last time we met that I was building a cul-de-sac because it didn't match up with Collier's needs plan. Comments from residents on timing of 31 and the Wilson Pikett Bridge. Comments from residents on timing of State Road 8 widening, 78 widening, and comments on access, mobility, and public lands. So these are the state highway projects all the way out through 2050. These are the SIS, and as I probably need to explain for some of the people listening, we have state highway projects that are, just for the background of it, they're state funds that they cannot be used on off systems, so they can only be used on state roads. And then there's also state funds that well, there's things like grants, for instance, that are being offered that can be used off system and they're not usually used on system. So we kind of split those lists out, and then from there, the SIS, this is where a lot of the funding is going at this point. This is their higher system around the state. For us, it's State Road 80, State Road 31, I-75, and you'll see that from there. We got the I-75 widening from the county line up to Corkscrew Road, goes all the way down to Golden Gate Parkway. You also have things like the Daniels Parkway interchange. It's under construction right now, and then also things like the State Road 31 widening and the bridge from 80 up to 78. Then there's a bunch of things that are partially funded through the process as well. So yeah, this is where we separated it out, where we're using state and federal that could be used for those on the local projects. Again, some of this doesn't take it, the portion here for Burn Store is split with the county, so we could try to get some grant money, but also whatever federal money we might be able to get. Obviously, the design got a portion of that as well. These are the Lee County funded projects. As I mentioned before, we ended up getting into the third tier of the Lee County priorities that they put out. I did also include all the bridge projects that were in the 3 years. Each of these segments, the one I do need to bring up is right here. I got an email yesterday where somebody was asking for an appropriation for Northeast 24th, and I had it into 2 to 4 lanes previously, and I changed it to 2 to 3 lanes from a previous study that was done. As part of this adoption, I'm asking to change that to 4 lanes on here to match that appropriation request that has been submitted to FDOT. Well, we got it through FDOT. So there are some projects in Estero and Fort Myers, as well as I don't think it's showing up here. This is the privately funded, or it's at the top, developer funded projects. This is obviously what Babcock is doing. This is also Kingston that will be doing it in Kingston. And then there is one little section that's been in there for a long time, the east-west, that's like a bypass of that intersection in that area. So what we're asking today is review, provide comments, and adopt the 2050 long-range plan following public input. And we have at least 3 public speakers, I think, towards this item. But I open it up. Any questions the board has, or we can jump into the public comments.
Board questions or comments? Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. I noticed on the transportation corridor slide that First Store, I didn't think First Store Road showed up on it. I believe that the urgency of doing something about that is because of the fact that it actually has become a transit corridor between the growth of the airport in Punta Gorda as well as using it as an evacuation route. I'm surprised that it didn't show up.
So what they're showing in this area is MOD, which kind of covers some of the Burnt Store up to the portion there.
Well, the problem is the pinch point. You've got a
about this, the priority part here. This the ranking ones?
No, you had the whole ledger of the projects. And yes, it's a sheet like that, and it says transportation corridor on the top of it.
Hold on.
Okay.
This one? That's our priority projects.
Yeah, no. But anyway, I just think that that pinch point
Here.
where we don't have the additional lanes is what causes the problems that we're having right now. And so if it's not being considered a transportation corridor, I think it needs to be.
Okay, so from the one side, Burnstore Road is in the cost feasible plan to be done, not as fast as everybody wants it, to be widened to 4 lanes. So I guess if there's a specific graphic that was showing that, I think they're probably showing more of the urbanized area when you're talking about the transit or whatever, but
Okay.
it's in the 2036 to 2040 timeframe, which is obviously when it's under design at the moment, is not as fast as everybody wants it to be, and that kind of takes off that comments from the last meeting where we were talking about looking at a sales tax.
And our commissioners in a few different settings have talked about the fact that there could be some interim improvements to
Yes.
assist in the safety of that road. Do we have funding for that?
So there's maybe some possibilities to get safety funds depending on what kind of crash and if it shows higher. There are obviously issues with some of it, but I think we're going to have more discussion about that next month because the CAC is having a discussion prior to your meeting next month with some recommendations they think need to do in the interim until it gets widened based on safety.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions or comments?
Just as a follow-up to that, if that section would be identified as a corridor, would that increase emphasis for either funding and or time?
It's a high priority with both of us. And a high priority even from FDOT when you're talking about trying to go after TRIP funds. It's got all the segments to the south, got some type of funding towards it. That doesn't have an impact of what it's a high priority with both us and Charlotte as well, which I'm sure we'll have more discussion about it again in February at our joint meeting with Charlotte.
Anything else from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll open up the public comment. I've got 3 cards here. We'll start with Amanda Cochran.
Morning. If I could get the thing to pull up. This is yours, right?
Oh, you don't have to worry about that.
Oh, I don't?
No,
Okay.
I'm good. I'll just.
Okay.
Good morning, Amanda Cochran. Members of the board, thank you for the opportunity. Information retrieved from the FDOT website reveals that State Road 31 Bridge is scheduled to be closed at the end of this coming February and early March for several weeks to replace the deck. That timing overlaps with an event that has occurred for over 100 years and brings 20 to 30,000 vehicles that same weekend into the same area. Closing the bridge during that time period would create unimaginable congestion and safety hazards that could be avoided. Could the county and transit agencies please coordinate proactively to adjust the schedule or develop an operational plan that prevents this predictable and unnecessary risk for the Lee County citizens in that area? The Wilson-Piggott Bridge is not simply an aging structure. It is one of the only emergency evacuation routes for an entire section of Lee County within Zone A. That theory was recently tested as the bridge was suddenly shut down this past September and October. We were stuck for hours. When this bridge fails, people simply cannot evacuate. Fire, EMS, and law enforcement could not reach endangered citizens should that need arise. Total gridlock. These issues warrant the highest possible MPO prioritization, but the urgency runs far deeper. The bridge is 65 years old, well past the 50-year design life. FDOT has documented decades of accelerating deterioration. Even after repeated major repairs in 86, 94, 08, and a multi-million-dollar overhaul in 2020, FDOT still determined it must be replaced because the bridge earned a 52/100 sufficiency rating in 2021, already near the federal replacement threshold. and that was 3 inspections ago. Since then, inspections were done in 22, October of 23, and October 25. Yet, because post 9/11 rules classify them as exempt, the public can't see these reports, leaving the residents aware of only the general performance categories, not the bridge's true condition. So I respectfully ask the board, have any of the current MPO board members reviewed the most recent October 2025 inspection report? And if so, does it contain information that the public should be aware of regarding the bridge's actual current disability? On October 2nd, Janella Newsom from the communications at FDOT told Gulf Coast News that the bridge could be completed in 5, 9, 10 years, depending on funding. So there are still questions surrounding timing and funding of this bridge. It cannot be stressed enough, this bridge is an emergency evacuation route designated by the Florida Division of Emergency Management and the county. Its functionality is critical to the safety and welfare of our residents. The MPO should have an obligation to ensure that this is the highest level of priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Darius Cochran.
Morning, appreciate it. Everybody at the MPO has been very kind, very nice, answered questions the best you can with the information that you have. Not that it matters, but my family's been here 4 generations. Bayshore area, Northeast Lee County, of course, Alva. 1993, the government came to the neighbors and family and said, we're taking your land on Bayshore Road. What we have is a desire to 4-lane from I-75 to State Road 31. Because we have a little 2-lane road. We have a big, huge civic center that has the largest building. We need that road 4-lane. 93. So the document, I don't know how to roll this thing up, but if you look at that document right there, State of Florida Department of Transportation. My father, Jimmy J. Cochran, the nicest man on the face of this earth. They took it in 1993, 32 years ago. So we've been looking at this, we've been inspecting this, we've been doing feasibility studies, we've been doing what do you call PD&E, environmentals. I just looked on this sheet and it's not funded and it's not ready to go. You don't have it on the list that it needs to be done, 2036, 2040? It's been 32 years and we have property along Bayshore Road. We don't know where the roads are going to come in. We can't. Very difficult to sell the Bayshore corridor, the commercial there from I-75. We've got several tracts of land there. It's a commercial corridor from I-75 to State Road 31. And after 32 years, the county commissioners blame it on the state. The state says we get the priorities from the county, the leaders at the county. I don't want to be here and talk about this, but I feel like it's necessary for myself, my family, and my neighbors. It's up towards insanity. From LaBelle to I-75, we have 30 miles of compromised bridges. Every single bridge, I think, was built in the 60s. So in the 60s, it was a priority to build bridges and infrastructure in this town. But since then, it really doesn't seem to be a priority. And nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to talk about it. And right now, they want to replace the bridge, shut it completely down at the same time as the fair.
Thank you. Marcia Ellis.
Thank you.
Good morning, Marcia Ellis for the record, and I am speaking on, in the packet, it is the table on 319, the roadway needs list. And number one project identifier is the leg from Alico to Ben Hill, or on Alico Road from Ben Hill Griffin to Airport Hall Road. I know this intersection well. This is my intersection, right? I go down this intersection every day. And let me tell you, when the opportunity came to weigh in at the Alico Road, when we were having our meetings and we were discussing that project, I pointed out in formal writing, not only to MPO and all the other powers that be, that there is no right turn lane there. We have a completely decimated, flattened piece of property at Ben Hill Griffin and Alico. It is completely leveled. Every cypress tree gone. Every bit of vegetation leveled. Water standing feet deep in the rainy season. But there is no right turn lane there. We have 3 mines that exit onto Alico Road, and there is no right turn lane. So whatever data has been gathered from that intersection, it's gamed. It's not comparable to the other data that's gathered where reasonable people have put in a right turn lane to accommodate all of this traffic. The lights are extremely short at that intersection as well. Very, very short lights. And so the traffic is backing up, and there is no exit. There's no flyover or turn lane or way to go right for all of that traffic that could be exiting over onto Ben Hill Griffin. So it's not an issue. I see here that it's to widen from 4 to 6 lanes. Right? We're putting that as our top priority in this county when we have people dying over on Burnt Store Road constantly. I would also say that when we talk about the Kingston Ranch Road, which is PUB project identifier 25 at 109.40, I'm sure that's millions, could be billions by the time it gets built. I thought that was developer funded.
It is.
Oh, okay. So
That's just identifying.
That's identifying the need. So what I'm going to say is this. We have so much urban sprawl out to every single corner of the county that it's really difficult to take care of the people who actually live here. And I would just ask that our priorities be refocused on improving the lives and saving the lives of the longstanding residents and the people that are here. Because we're enjoying a much diminished quality of life at the expense of people that don't even live here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and ask for a motion for adoption of the 2050 Long-Range Transportation Plan.
Move the item.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a roll call vote.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to new business. Appointment of the 2026 MPOAC representative. Don?
So for this last year, Fred Burson, Councilmember Burson was the primary member and Laura Carr was the alternate. But every year by the end of December, essentially, we have to identify 2 members, one as the primary and the alternate to be on this committee, which is the statewide MPOs that meet 4 times a year up in most of the time in Orlando.
Board questions or comments? Board volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else? This does require a adoption, so do we have a motion to approve Laura as our representative?
Can I switch him then? Put Fred Burson as the alternate, even though he's
Since
not
Fred's not here? Yeah.
defend himself?
We know how that works when you miss a meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Fred.
A motion? Thank you, Joe. Second? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, I guess I skipped public comment. Sorry about that. No public comment? Thank you. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to adoption of resolution supporting 2026 safety targets. Ron?
Good morning. This is something that we bring to the MPO board every year. So we need to set safety targets for the MPO every year. That's a federal mandate. But we have a couple of options. One is set our own targets for safety, or we support what is actually adopted by and set by FDOT. And we have always supported FDOT targets instead of setting our own targets, and that goes back to 2018. So the targets have always remained the same, like it's a zero. Basically, we want to trend all our crashes towards zero and fatalities and serious injuries to zero. Before I ask you to adopt that as resolution, I do have a few slides that show statistics and performance regarding safety in Lee County. And starting with this particular slide on your right, the orange in here basically shows your 5-year rolling averages for each of the years up to 2024. And the green here shows the actual fatalities every year. So when you look at the actual fatalities, you see there's been an up and down here. It's going up, and this time we have been kind of lucky because the fatalities have actually come down. But then if you look at the 5-year rolling averages, and remember that actually gives you the bigger picture as to actually how in the county we are doing. So this is more like a gradual increase. Although, like when you look at year by year fatalities, this year up until December 5th, the number of fatalities has been 97. And if you look at the monthly serious injuries for 2025, this is what you see. These are pretty much your latest. This is actually serious injuries. There should be another one.
There you go.
I think I included the wrong slide in here. That's not the fatalities. That's actually the serious injuries. But let me come back to that later. So this is the rate of fatalities. And again, you see the gradual increase in the rate of fatalities when you look at the 5-year rolling averages. Although, it has dropped, when you look at the actual year-by-year rate of fatalities. And then you have the number of serious injuries. Again, the serious injuries have been dropping over the years. Started with almost 2021, then it started dropping and then dropped all the way down to 317. But then again, these 5-year rolling averages that you get, that is being shown in the orange line, that shows a gradual decline. And this is the slide of the serious injuries, and this is by month for this particular year. And so I have it tracked down to all the way to the latest crash, which resulted in serious injuries, and up to December 5th. And that's what we have. And this is the rate of serious injuries. Again, there's a gradual decline in the rate of serious injuries if you look at those by 5-year rolling averages. And then this is the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries together. that accounts for, when I say non-motorized, it would be your bicycle-related fatalities and injuries, and including pedestrians or even micromobility, e-bikes and e-scooters. So the number here, again, it has dropped when you look at the actual fatalities and serious injuries by year. But then when you look at the bigger picture of the 5-year rolling averages, it's kind of flat out here, and then gradual increase here. And these are all the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries by month for this particular year. And the orange here basically shows all the fatalities, and then the green shows all your serious injuries. So now I am going back to the first slide. So your action today is basically adopt the task resolution that you have in your packet, basically supporting the statewide safety targets for calendar year 2026.
Any board questions, comments? Sure, Commissioner.
Ron, actually, I was really impressed to see serious injuries, fatalities, things seem to be on a downward trend. Was any analysis done, and I'd welcome any comments from the FDOT too, any analysis done on what's working, what's making the difference?
Sure. Yeah. So the state had actually seen, before we were seeing, a decline in serious injuries, and it was surprising ours were still going up. I think there's a lot to do with the safety features in the cars that are coming out, like backup cameras, other things like that, automatic braking, things like that. I think some of that is helping with the serious injuries, airbags, safer on the inside. Now, doesn't always make it safer on the outside for bikes and peds, but that was down a little bit this year for us as well.
Yeah, I just always, when you see numbers like that and things start to trend in the right direction, you want to know what's working so that you can do more of it. Yeah.
Well, we are doing some outreach stuff basically from the Safe Streets for All, but that's fairly recent, so I don't want to take any credit as that, but hopefully, even the stuff with the discussions we've had about Bernstow Road, they've been doing some more enforcement out there. Hopefully those things are having an impact.
The other thing is also, when you look at the non-motorized side of the story, we have been building more shared use path and sidewalks, and that has also kind of helped.
Bill.
Thank you. I had the same observation that Commissioner Hammond had, but I think it's even more significant than it looks, because if this were done on a per capita basis, all those declines started at around 2020. And the influx that we had into our county in 2020, 2021, 2022, to take this just on a simple numerical basis doesn't even account for the fact that we had way more people here than we had in the past. And certainly we all know about our population and our traffic here in the springtime and when we have our snowbirds down. But the one month that kind of stuck out to me, and when you went through the monthly arena there, was how August seemed to be a big spike. So from the standpoint of this being analyzed for a why and what best practices might be there, what aren't we doing in August or in that late summertime that causes the spike? It actually showed up in a couple different spots where August was an uptick. And if we haven't looked at it, maybe just take a peek and see, what was causing that in that one month. It seemed like that would be one of our slower months. The kids aren't back in school yet. They're just starting to get back, toward the end of the month. But it's interesting.
For items like that, we can pull up the crash reports. They're not a ton of them, and look and see what we can see from that, looking at it. See if we can come up to something.
And like I said before, I thought I had put the monthly fatalities, but I didn't apologize for that.
Thanks.
Commissioner Pendergrass.
Don or Ron, you maybe talk about it. So I think a lot of this is also a accumulation of FDOT doing a lot of education the last couple of years, and we've been seeing that here from the MPO side, and also hopefully the new super speeder law, we're going to see long-term effects of that, because Also, I think of enforcement. Last time I had a briefing with FHP, the last 2 years in this district and Troop F area, they've been a lot more enforcement, and you're seeing that also with the Sheriff's Department and the police departments. They're seeing more enforcement. Building that number for August, I think a lot of that is also from being a past DUI officer and a breathalyzer operator. The month of August is hotter in Florida. People drink more. The body absorbs the alcohol more, and you see more DUIs, crash-related accidents in July and August in Florida because of that, because people drink more because of the weather. Unfortunately, that's what happens. So that'd be part of that accumulation of the July and August numbers soon. Because the people drink more, and the body doesn't absorb it faster than water. That's the results of it.
Anything else from the board?
I just wanted to say something more. I guess I don't see any elected representatives from the city of Fort Myers, but I was going to say it for their benefit. As you know, like on Park Avenue, downtown Fort Myers, north of MLK, in October, there was a deadly crash, resulting in the death of cyclists. So there's also a project that is coming up there, and I'm taking that as an example. But wherever like APDOT is coming in for, let's say, like a resurfacing project or something, like we want to make sure that we coordinate with APDOT to put bicycle lanes in there, because in the case of the death on Park Avenue, that was a cyclist who got hit while he was riding his bike on the pavement, on the road itself. So just wanted to let you know that we have reached out to APDOT, and there is a resurfacing project coming up, basically that calls for resurfacing on Fowler Avenue and Park Avenue in downtown Fort Myers, including the Edison Bridge. And we are working with APDOT to make sure that they put, like bicycle lanes on the bridge and on the roadway itself.
Okay, anything else from the board? Laura?
Chair, and the other, Denise Carlson, our new superintendent, and Sheriff Pine have worked together to enforce. In that August, kids go back to school, and it's amazing how many people would just run by school buses with their lights and arm out, and they're enforcing it now. And when they warnings, there were 3,000 more tickets that people were passing, and now they're enforcing it, and I think that'll send a message also.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a pilot project that we were talking about that the school district has set up out here. Yes. And maybe we can bring back some of the findings at a later meeting on that pilot project.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Anything else on this item from the board? Open it up for public comment. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll seek a motion for the adoption of the resolution supporting 2026 safety targets.
I move approval of resolution 2524.
Thank you, Mike.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to a review of the Lee Transit Development Plan.
Don Wolf will open it up.
Good morning, Chairman King and MPO board members. My name is Dawn Huff, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager for Lee Tran. And we are here today to present our transit development plan, also known as a TDP. So transit agencies are required to develop a 10-year plan with a 5-year major update in order to receive state funding. So this also must align with the MPO's long-range transportation plan. So this is there's a much public involvement with this process, as it takes over a year to develop. So this includes our interviewing passengers, holding stakeholder and steering committee meetings, as well as public outreach in a open house forum. So our consultant that was brought on board is Ryan Suarez, and he's here to present our TDP. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Ryan Suarez, and thank you very much, Don. Ryan Suarez with Kimley Horn. It's been a pleasure working with staff over the course of this year on this project, and it's a pleasure to be here in front of everyone. As Dawn mentioned, this is a required document for agencies that receive a public transportation block grant from the state. I believe she indicated this is a major update that needs to be completed every 5 years. The rules did change on us through FDOT last year, so we had a little bit of extra time to work with staff on some extras. You'll see the due date is actually March 1st on this slide. What's illustrated here are really the 5 major components that need to go into the TDP, as Dawn mentioned. There is extensive public outreach. We did go through a lot of technical analysis. I'm going to save you all a lot of those technical details and talk about what's in the plan. What are the actions that are going to be taken? That's in number 5 there towards your right. So think about the service plan itself, this 10-year phased implementation plan. We broke it out into 3 different phases: a short, a mid, and the long term. And I mentioned, think about the TDP in the short-term phase as the first 3 years, the next 3 years, and so forth, with the last 4 years in that long-term phase. The extra time that was spent on the project was this iterative process with staff to come up with this short-term plan. Effectively, it's a cost-neutral plan. What can we do with our existing resources, be much more efficient with what we've got, so that way we can deliver better and more productive service. When I say productive service, that means more ridership. So that was an important aspect of what we did. In addition to that, we also didn't want to disenfranchise some of our major activity points. So a couple of things that went into this short-term service plan was, 1, productivity, those routes that are most productive versus those routes that aren't doing so well, and 2, maintaining service coverage, connectivity to those points that perhaps may not be the most productive, but we know there are transit-dependent folks trying to access. So think social service agencies, think medical centers, those types of locations. What you see here really is the result. The end result was 9 routes were identified for route modifications, realignments. And when I say realignments, we shorten, we lengthen, we cover areas that were perhaps were covered by other routes. As I indicated, 9 routes with those service modifications and realignments. 6 routes resulted with an increase in service frequency. The short-term plan maintains service coverage throughout the existing, what we do today in terms of Letran. The change really ends up being the level of service. When I say level of service, I'm talking about frequency, how often those buses come. And that's what's shown here. The routes in the pink are the ones that actually improved in terms of their frequency. I do have a table here that provides a little summary, a big table, but again, it tried to simplify this in a way that illustrates those routes that had the improvements in frequency, which are those highlighted in green, versus what we found were to be the lower performers, which are the routes towards your right that are highlighted in red. You will see that some of our routes that are lower performers did see an increase in frequency, and again, that goes back to us trying to maintain coverage and connectivity to those locations that our passengers are trying to get to, those transportation disadvantaged, those transit-dependent persons. The vehicle requirement is important because that really is the rule of thumb and the way we try to gauge the reallocation of services. Every time, well, not every time, in most cases generally, when you add a bus, you're going to add more hours of service, more dollars are going to be required. When you remove a bus, you're going to remove hours from service, and you're going to reduce the cost associated with it. So this is a good gauge for us to be able to modify the system and ensure that we are staying within our existing operating budget. In terms of the mid and the short-term plan, you can organize these projects in 3 major categories. This includes improvements in service frequency. These routes are identified based on those high performers. We did look at the benchmark metric is passenger trips per service hour on the road. So these routes, which include the route that operates on Palm Beach, the Del Prado corridor, Route 70, and also US 41 south of the the South Fort Myers Transfer Center all the way down into Collier County. These 3 routes were flagged for increased service frequency. The second category is service to new areas. Dawn mentioned a transit priority corridor analysis that was done as part of the LRTP. This is actually a new requirement for TDPs, and it's something that the MPO took on and demonstrates our coordination with the MPO in terms of maintaining consistency in projects. That analysis had a ranking of corridors based on the metrics and the analysis criteria that Dawn described. Of those highest ranking corridors, there were only 2 that didn't have fixed route operations today. They included Pine Island Boulevard. That's what you see here from Merchants Crossing, and we don't show Burnstow Road, but the extension does include an extension all the way to Burnstow Road. And then the second route, which is that purple line on this screen, which takes us from the South Fort Myers Transfer Center all the way to Lehigh Acres. So this creates a connection from Lehigh Acres all the way to South Fort Myers, as opposed to what operates today, which takes you right into Fort Myers directly. The last category of services here are the mobility on demand services. You'll see 3 areas that we flagged for the MOD, for the microtransit, for those types of services that are growing in popularity across the country, really. The 3 areas include the area near FGCU, San Carlos Park, to the north, North Fort Myers, and then in Cape Coral. There is an opportunity here to perhaps replace lower performing fixed route service with these MOD services, and that is something that we have recommended to staff. The 40, which is the route in Cape Coral, the 60, which is the route that currently operates in San Carlos Park, and the 595, which is the North Fort Myers route, those are all low-performing fixed route services. A similar table shown here as to what was shown for the short term. I'm not going to belabor the details here. One thing that's important about this TDP and that distinguishes it from the prior effort, and this was a charge to us, Kimley Horn, Ryan, bring us and help us develop a plan that's realistic, something that's achievable, not just the pie in the sky that holds all the possibilities of transit service that can be out there. And I think in working with staff, I think that's what we've been able to get to here. Costs are shown here, and I do want to emphasize that these are fully allocated annual operating costs. The Cape Coral MOD, what we've estimated is a requirement for about 4 vehicles to deliver that service, and that's just based on the size of the zone. There are still some discussions that are yet to be had with city staff about what that zone will actually look like and those defined boundaries. These are our estimates based on how things stand today. There are a number of different funding sources available to LeTran to deliver this program. They include federal, state, and local funding sources as shown here on this list. In terms of the short term, we're presenting here today. The TDP does need to be adopted by the Board of County Commissioners before it gets sent to FDOT. If all goes well, the plan is to roll out all the short-term service improvements in 2026 by the end of next year. And that's going to require boots on the ground, notifications to passengers. There are a number of changes that are going to impact everyday riders, trip habits and patterns. So it's important for us to get out there and inform our users. The schedule is here. I indicated the board meeting that's tentative for January. I mentioned the BOCC approval prior to the FDOT submittal. Any questions about the TDP?
Board members, any questions? Go ahead, Bill.
If you could go back to a slide, I think it was short-term frequency needs. Yeah, no, I think you were there. Next one down. In Route 40, and I might not understand what these numbers mean, but the existing peak service frequency at 53 with existing vehicle crime at 2, it shows the new peak service frequency is 65. Does that represent an increase from the 53, or in some way does that mean there's less need?
That is an increase in the time between buses, so that's a lower level of service. Folks will have to wait a little bit longer for that next 40 bus. Does that put it in simple terms?
Yeah, because I was misunderstanding why we were going from 53 to 65 and going from 2 vehicles to 1 vehicle. And then further in the presentation, on your slide that said mid to long term needs, keep going. Yeah, and so down on the bottom in that Route 40, the Cape Coral route, it says the new vehicle requirement is 4. So I'm wondering why in the short term we are going from 2 to 1 in that zone, with the thought that at the mid and long term needs we're going to 4.
Yeah, what this reflects here, this is that mobility on demand service, and what's shown here in the short term is a fixed route operation.
And so those 4 vehicles then would be
Smaller.
like ready to serve when called upon. Is that the idea?
Exactly. So we have a zone. You'll see it shown here in the pink for that MOD service that shows the 4. Based on, I believe it was a 30-minute response time, to cover our estimate of the demand for that MOD service, we're going to say we need 4 vehicles to cover that. They will be smaller vehicles, yes, and they'll be ready on demand. So that's where that comes in. This service, as the way we're proposing it, and again, this does need to be confirmed, validated, and discussed with staff. We recommend eliminating the Route 40 entirely. And these 2 vehicles are the larger heavy-duty buses, 35 to 40 feet.
And do these forecasts, if you will, include current development that's in place? Because in that area and just west of that area, there is some huge development that's in progress that will be completed by the time the mid and long-term forecast is considered. Is that considered, or is only present development, present need considered?
We use the MPO's long-range population and employment forecasts to develop our ridership forecasts for new services, for the potential for new services. So, and I do believe that those do include potential development and beyond. They're 2050 forecasts. And just a point of clarification, there is a fixed route operation that's proposed along Pine Island. I don't know if that perhaps addresses some of the development that you're referring to, and that's proposed to operate from Merchants Crossing all the way out to Burnt Store Road.
Right. This is actually, that development is happening in that corridor, so I'm concerned maybe that we're cutting that off a little early because of the demand that's going to be there both for employment and for visits as that commercial corridor is developed, and then a residential community of over 3,000 people or 3,000 dwellings. So that's a little bit of a concern of cutting that fixed route out when that will probably be open in the next 2 years.
And I appreciate that comment very much. Again, this is our recommendation. There are other reasons to keep routes or remove them. So again, those discussions still need to be had when funding becomes available for this MOD.
Okay.
Just a second. Dominic Gemelli with Lee Tran. Regarding the removal of the Route 40 and the replacement with the microtransit, is that what your concern was?
Yeah, with the Grove looking to open, as well as the developmental community that's there, and then Seven Islands.
Sure. So this is a plan that can potentially take place, right? We could potentially remove that Route 40. If that Route 40 continues to show ridership and ridership growth due to what's going on with the economical growth, whether it be business or residential growth, doesn't mean that necessarily has to be taken out. We can add mobility on demand as long as we find the funding sources for it, and still be able to leave fixed route in place. We wouldn't want to leave someone who's relying upon a route like that to pull it away if we didn't see that was the need. If the ridership grows in that area, then obviously we would relook at how that Route 40 is routed, how it looks, and how the mobility on demand areas would look in comparison to that route. Right now, the Route 40 runs within that MOD zone that you're seeing on the screen now. Again, this is a blueprint or a map for us to follow over the next 5 years. 5 years from now, we do another complete upgrade. Even though this is projecting out 10 years, 5 years from now, we'll be doing the same exact thing looking out 10 years.
Okay, as long as it continues to be malleable, that's good.
We're constantly evaluating, what's going on ridership-wise and trends and such. And this is what the trend has been lately, and now, and this what's kind of driving this first 5 years of what we're seeing in this TDP.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Seeing none, I'll open it up to public comment on this item. Okay, none there? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the 2050 bicycle pedestrian element presentation.
Nathan Kotz.
Good morning, thank you. So we're working with the MPO to do the needs plan identification, working our way to the cost feasible plan, as well as a few bonus subtasks. So starting off with the needs plan, we reviewed essentially planning level documents and some of the programs for all the jurisdictions within Lee County, pulled out what they were looking at, as well as looking at R2P2 documents, and there's a few capacity projects as well with bike ped improvements, specifically looking for what was planned from the bike ped network. Once we had those, we categorized what phase they're in, looking at whether it's ongoing in construction, whether it's fully funded, SunTrail projects, things like that. Like, where are they at in the process, right? Is this a 30-year plan, or is this something in the next 5 years that we're going to see? We then mapped those projects. What we're looking at right now is a list of over 900 projects that are listed in the needs plan. So this is something that has been identified as a need, but it may or may not have a timeline or funding attached to it. From there, we did a facility gap analysis. So taking those needs plans and what's existing on the ground, looking at where the gaps are. From the needs plan, we're looking at things that are funded for construction or already in construction, those as existing. With that in mind, we started with bicycle facilities and looked at gaps on both sides, left side, right side, and a continuous no gap. The FDOT's RCI data was used. This is for on-system projects, I should say that. And we compared that to FHWA's bikeway selection guidance. So not only are we looking at the gap, but we're also looking at what should be there if there is a gap, or if we have a facility, does it match what FHWA is saying should be there as well? Then we looked at pedestrians. Pedestrians similar, once again, looking at the needs plan, what's under construction, what's planned for construction, gaps on both sides, left side, or it's continuous. For the most part, what we selected to be there, either a sidewalk or a shared use path, is based on what's adjacent to that gap. There are some exceptions. If a shared use path is on one side and the sidewalk's on the other, we selected a shared use path. And then with conversation with the MPO, if it was a gap larger than a quarter mile, we also selected a shared use path, looking for a better facility where it made sense. With those gaps, we applied a prioritization process, looking at safety, and then some, what we would say are proxies for use and need, right? So that's transit, that's schools, and 0 to 1 vehicle households. The people that, when we're looking at it, have a higher likelihood of using it. Transit usually identifies that someone is walking to and from the bus stops. 0 to 1 vehicle households are pretty obvious. If we don't have a car, we've got to get around somewhere. And then with the school in Florida, obviously that 2-mile buffer around schools, there is no busing. So if you're not getting driven to school, you are going to be walking or biking. Taking the needs plan, taking the gap analysis, and taking funding, we worked with Ron and Don to look at a cost feasible plan. So to that, we added planning level cost estimates. These are ballpark estimates. We're looking at percentages for things like MOT, mobilization, to identify just ballpark, what are these projects going to cost, what funds are going to be coming in, and then applied projects to those funds. There was a little bit of a gaming session, looking through, okay, this costs this much, this costs this much, how are we going to apply those projects? And developed a list for the cost feasible plan. That cost feasible plan, the list of it will be in the report. It's a few pages long. I didn't figure we wanted to go over every single project here, but that information is readily available. And you see it mapped on here. They're distributed throughout the county. If I go back up, Fort Myers and Lee County generally have a little bit of a larger share, but we try to distribute them based on the dollar amounts throughout, based on what their needs are. We did get some input directly from some of the municipalities of specifically which of their priorities they wanted, and built that out. That was the core of our effort, getting from what's out there, what's needed, and getting to that cost feasible plan of what can we actually pay for. And of that list of 900 plus projects, what are the largest priorities that we want to attach the dollars to? Now we're getting into what I would call the subtask or the flavor to this effort. One of the things we're asked to look at is high-speed bicycle lanes. Whether you're a road rider or whether you're micromobility, getting into electric bicycles, bicycles are getting faster as the adoption, or people are riding them faster as adoption increases. So we started with a survey of facilities around the country and a little bit around the world. Wanted to look at what are other people doing that is successful so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of those takeaways that you get are things that would be common sense. You could look at it and you say, hey, well, I could have told you that. I think what's good about the effort is the fact that now it's essentially data driven. So when you're having to make hard policy or hard dollar decisions, knowing that that decision actually counts and is backed with something that is evidentially beneficial, I think helps. So looking at separating higher speed bicyclists from pedestrians, trail widths, looking at 11 to 12 feet or wider, as volume and speed increases, the width increases as well, visibility at intersections, and then looking at buffers in those high-use, high-speed situations. From that, we developed a number of typical sections and some design guidance. We ranked it from lower speed to higher speed, and then lower volume to higher volume. With a low speed, low volume, obviously you're looking at a shared use path, not a lot of separation. You can coexist on a minimal facility without much negative interaction. And then as you get to higher speed, higher volumes would be some of your more urban cycle tracks or well-traveled route by, say, cycling clubs. You want to keep the two modes separate. So looking at three of them, just looking at some of the extreme examples and a median. Lower speed, lower volume, as you can see, is just that 5.5 path on each side where people can share the trail. They can coexist on it. As you go to the medium speed, medium volume, you can still share the same amount of asphalt, but there are designated areas for everybody. So if you are going 20 miles an hour on a cyclo, you're not conflicting with someone out for a stroll going 2.5, 3 miles an hour walking. Separation is optional. When I say separation, I mean the physical, like putting in a delineator, putting in a separator, something like that. But there is the expectation that you would have, at least with paint, a designated space to be on that trail. And then finally, in your high-speed, high-volume areas, you're actually going to put in separation. So you'd have essentially a walking path adjacent to what would effectively be a cycle track with some level of separation. It doesn't have to be landscaped. That's just what we wanted to use for the typical section, but something should be there. Moving on, we wanted to look at micromobility crash tracking. As you are aware, micromobility is growing in adoption. So we did a national review, we did some interviews in Florida, did an integration and gap analysis, and then came up with our final recommendations. The trends right now, obviously crash trends are rising. Low helmet use and alcohol involvement are fairly high. I was reading a study, and a lot of it was talking about people just aren't used to scooters. Most of us haven't ridden a scooter since we were very young. So when you get on a scooter that can now go 15 miles an hour on a sidewalk that's a little bit bumpy, it doesn't always work out well. E-bike injuries are going up. I should caution, though, correlation and causation. One of the reasons they are going up is because adoption is going up. And the impetus of this is the fact that we don't really understand what's going on because it's not being tracked well. So there are some data gaps. With the crash reports, I'm sure you've heard a number of presentations, engineers live and die by the crash reports. That's where we get our crash data from. It's the easiest place. There are some other sources with healthcare, but they're not usually easy to get and analyze. So looking at that, looking at ordinance, like consistent language and ordinances, to that end, even the state of Florida, there's proposed legislation. I don't know if it's been introduced yet, but it's worked on being introduced or written to classify some of the higher level e-bikes as motorcycles, like as you would like a moped, to be able to handle some of that. Our recommendations came down to revising the long-form crash report. There's a federal document, the MMUCC, that kind of outlines what states' crash data should have. We are not currently in line with that. So a lot of that's geared towards making that alignment, which accounts for some of those crash reporting opportunities, looking at maybe some additional stuff outside and above the MMUCC to give us better, more granular data, training, statutory and local options, and then just national coordination with what's going on with some of the national agencies and organizations that are involved in this. To that end, through interviews, state of Florida, it was found we are undergoing a change currently, a revision of the crash diagram, or the crash data collection forms. I'll have a timeline at the end of the report. I want to go over kind of what's being proposed now. We're at the very beginning of that process. A lot of it, I think the next step is having stakeholder meetings, engaging with law enforcement, because there is a balance between what is accurate to record in the field and what data can be used after. So what that's going to look like, if you've ever dealt with crash reports, the information is not always in one spot. There's a few different places, so when we analyze crash data information and we put it in databases, a lot of times there's a formula where you're looking at multiple locations and categories and putting them together with an if X then Y type scenario to get whether it's an angle crash or a left turn crash or what's happening. So in that spirit, under the collision with non-fixed object, since these are largely vehicular based, and this is where our pedestrian, pedal cycle, railroad collisions are based, we're adding just an other non-motorist category. And then when you get under the non-motorist description, right now it's simply adding e-bike, e-scooter, and other powered transportation device. There are some other states that add higher classifications. I think that does, in our review, we found a little bit problematic because in the field trying to determine, especially as quickly as these things are coming out, what class it falls under, because sometimes there's, it's levels of gray because there's not legally defining a class. And then with the other powered transportation devices, it seems like every year for Christmas you get that, it used to be the Toys R Us catalog, but now it's the Amazon and Walmart catalogs. You've got a one wheel, you've got the hoverboards, you've got something that my kids are circling and handing to me that they want. So being able to be flexible, because this is a multi-year process, we can't go back and adapt it every single year. Right now we're in the planning phase. Starting next year, we're going to be getting into doing the database design, database documentation updates. Phase 3 in 2027, software and testing, full MMUCC implementation. 2028 implementation and validation, so making sure that it's working well, and then the training and final support is rolling out in 2029. This is through the Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. vehicles. To that end, one of the other things we were asked is to look at uniform micromobility regulations. As we stated through our literature review, part of the issue is that every municipality, every different local agency has different ideas of what needs to happen with those. And while the corporate micromobility devices like Lime can adapt to it fairly well, when it comes to individually owned ones, it's a little bit more difficult sometimes of knowing what's going on where. So we were asked to look at countywide what the different ordinances were, what the different rules were concerning micromobility, see where we would recommend what a recommended universal ordinance would look like. We would start with making consistent definitions. It's hard to make rules if you can't define what you're making rules on. And then we worked through some language. This is just an example. It's more than this, but just an example of saying, hey, if we have Class 1 e-bikes, what are we recommending for those? Where are we recommending Class 2, Class 3, other micromobility? We looked at helmet laws, we looked at storage laws, things like that. And then recommended some local customizations, whether you're looking at pedal-only zones, no ride and walk zones. And a large part of the local customization challenges that we identified facing this. I'm sure many of you, anytime you're looking at any sort of changes, it's the same things, right? Everyone's philosophy on how we're going to roll this out or what needs to be there is a little bit different. There are unique local conditions. Cape Coral is going to be different than Fort Myers, a little bit different than Sanibel Island. So acknowledging and having the place of flexibility to where we do have a consistent framework, but we also have a little bit of flexibility to allow those local conditions to come through, and then just consensus building. Anytime there's stuff like this, there's always a lot of conversation and coordination and workshopping to make sure we come up with a product that people are okay with. Finally, we have a bonus round. So we were asked to take a look at a protected intersection. Does everybody know what a protected intersection is? So if you don't, I can't tell one way or the other. If you don't, largely it's holding space in the intersection for bicycle and pedestrians. It's trying to make that separation between vehicles and the more vulnerable modes so that you have a little bit more accessible and safer intersection for the bicyclists and pedestrians walking through. So we screened the state highway system looking for places that had somewhat appropriate speeds and places where there is good bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure existing on the main line as well as the side streets. The one location that came out, I'm not going to say it's the best location, but the one that did come out of this is US 41 and Williams. This is what it looks like today. If we zoom in, you can see the side streets are fairly simple. 6 lanes on the main line. There is a proposed project on both sides. So on the west side of US 41, we're doing a little bit of modification, a little bit of additional auxiliary lanes as you're approaching the intersection, as well as a fixed median. And then on the east side, we're adding some additional auxiliary lanes as well as receiving lanes. With that in mind, we just developed a high-level planning concept of what that protected intersection would look like. This is more proof of concept. It's something that is more intended to generate conversation of what could be done and a potential for a pilot project. And I appreciate your time today. Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Joe?
Just from an education standpoint, two elements. One, your communication with the traffic enforcement people, and then the general public, educating things on some of the new micro travel mechanisms, the e-scooters, the e-bikes. How do you relate to that?
So if I understand your question is, how are we educating the public and law enforcement on what's coming on? So there's a number of different ways that I've seen this happen. The FLHSMD is directly involving MHP and some of the other local agencies involved in that conversation and decision making. So they're going to have their methods of rolling out some of that crash data training as well. There is a statewide there's multiple statewide safety coalitions in different subject areas. So two that come to mind are the Motorcycle Safety Coalition and the Bike Ped Safety Coalition. I have seen and been involved in both of those, and in both of those, they have a law enforcement component that's there, and they work to develop a lot of times tip cards, and they also give training as well. We've been a part of that in the past, where we'll go down to agencies and work with law enforcement over, like, hey, like this is, for instance, when micromobility, say 5-6 years ago, micromobility starting to come out, I remember we worked to create a number of, like, this is what this is a moped, this is a motorcycle, this is X, Y, or Z, and work with them to identify those, or even, we've even done that with crash time. So I would, those are large ways. When it comes to interacting with the public, I would imagine it would be similar to anything else. News agencies pick it up. I don't know that there's been a consistent effort. Yes, sir.
Laura?
It was answered, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else on the board? Open it up to public comment on this item. Seeing none, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll move on to update on the US 41 and 6 Mile Cypress project.
So this should be fresh in the mind because we talked about this the last meeting, but since that time, they ended up having a public meeting, and we'll talk about that, and then also are zeroing in on a preferred alternatives. Jimmy Vilse with FTOT will kick off.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. Good morning, board members. Jimmy Vilse with FDOT to give you guys a quick update on the US 41 at 6 Mile Cypress PD&E intersection improvement project that we have going on. As you heard from Don, we had our workshop in late October. And as part of today's presentation, you will be reminded of what those alternatives were that were presented at the workshop, but you also have a chance to hear from us what the public perspective is on these alternatives. We've had some comments in favor of some alternatives and some comments against some of those alternatives. But you also will hear from FDOT what our plan is moving forward with this project as far as which alternative we believe should be disqualified from further analysis, whether it's due to cost or complex MOT. And you also hear what our game plan is as far as like moving to the next phase, which would be design. I have here today my consultant, Imran Ghani, who's going to go through the presentation, and I'll be available afterwards to answer any questions you may have. Imran?
Thank you. Good morning. So on October 17th, FDOT made a presentation before our public meeting. During our presentation, this board asked to be updated on what happened. So this is a very quick update on the project. I'll begin with the basics. These are our project limits. The one unique thing about this project is US 41 acts as a dividing line. East of 41, 6 Mile Cypress, is State Road 865. West is County Road 865. The reason we're doing this project is we're trying to relieve existing congestion. As you can see by this aerial photograph, there's a lot of queues and congestion already at this intersection. But not just to relieve existing intersection, but also to accommodate future demand. And third also is to enhance safety. The existing intersection is operating at level of service F right now. So remember, level of service A is the best grade, F is the worst grade. The intersection today is operating at level of service F. Before we begin any project, we try to first implement short-term, low-cost improvements. For this project, we asked ourselves, if you look at this photograph, you have dual lefts on almost all approaches, actually all 4 approaches. You have exclusive right turn lanes. We asked ourselves, can we add one more left turn lane? Can we have triple lefts? That's a very short-term, low-cost improvement that can be done very quickly, and does that solve the problem? So we projected our traffic to 2050. The delay that I was showing at 100 seconds goes to 349 seconds. And each of those improvements do help, but they don't make a significant improvement. So based on that, we shifted to a new approach, which was what can we do to redesign those intersections. So the three alternatives that we came up with, and I think we presented those at our last meeting, so I'll quickly go through them. Old Gladiolus Road, just before I show the alternative, cul-de-sacs, does not connect with 41. Our first option was to connect that. So a lot of the traffic that right now goes north and makes a left turn can actually make the left turn here and also the right turn. So we're removing all those left turning traffic from the 6 Mile Cypress in US 41 intersection. The other thing that this intersection does is we try to remove all the left turn movements, make them go through and do a U-turn because the intersection just could not handle all the traffic that's out there. So southbound, if you want to make a left turn, you have to do a U-turn. Westbound, eastbound, U-turn. The second alternative that we looked at was an overpass. In this, we would take US 41 over 6 Mile Cypress. We do have some movements that, again, we relocated away from the intersection, the eastbound and the westbound left turn movements. And the third option that we had was called a crossover alternative. This is actually very similar to what FDOT just constructed at 6 Mile Cypress and Colonial Boulevard. So if you actually use that road, you've actually used this idea. The left turns would actually shift over, and they could actually be traveling the same time as the through movements. Again, the westbound and eastbound left turns were relocated to U-turn movements. Just to give you an idea, this is a matrix that we presented, how well each of these alternatives did. If you look at the second line, the delay is reduced significantly from 349 seconds to almost 30 to 40 seconds. However, there is a cost associated with right-of-way and then construction, so our costs range from $70 million to $114 million. We had our public meeting on October 28th. We had our in-person meeting. October 30th, we had our virtual meeting. We had 31 people attend our in-person meeting, 23 attend our virtual meeting. We asked, explained the concepts to them, answered questions. They also provided feedback. We sort of tallied those. Several people spoke to us that they're in favor of an alternative. And in terms of that, Old Gladiolus Bypass and the US 41 overpass were the favorite. Several people simply wrote to us saying, don't really care what you do, but don't do this. And that one was Old Gladiolus Bypass, and most of these comments came from the Parkside condominium. And if I could summarize their comment, they're very used to having a secluded road without a lot of traffic. Their comment was that if you were to connect Old Gladiolus Drive, there would be significant amount of traffic in front of their condominiums. Based on that meeting, FDOT decided to eliminate the US 41 overpass. The number one reason is that it was the most expensive to build, and also it required a very complex temporary traffic control plan. In fact, in order to maintain traffic, one of the ideas that we had that we would have to connect Old Gladiolus Drive anyway on a temporary basis, because we needed that room to work and build the overpass. So all the left turns would have to be sent there. And so the result was that we were actually spending a lot of money building something that would then have to be taken out. And the third was it did not meet planning consistency. So the next steps is after our meeting, we met with Lee County MPO staff. We met with Lee County Department of Transportation. Presenting today at the Lee County MPO board, we had this meeting with the FDOT Access Management Committee to make sure that we are not affecting any of the access. This picture is just a video, but I guess this computer doesn't play. This is actually the displaced left turn at 6 Mile Cypress and Colonial Boulevard. And we're actually looking at this concept, trying to incorporate some of those lessons learned. And last thing we're doing is we're doing a micro simulation, which allows you to actually look at cars. And the important thing of that is to look at how those cars interact and how far the cube goes back. And just a lesson learned from here, when this was a normal intersection, they only had 2 left turn lanes, very, very long left turn lanes. When they converted to a displaced left, they went to a triple left. So these are the ideas. We're trying to refine our concepts to see if we can improve that and sort of also address some of the public comments that we received. This is our overall schedule. We had our public meeting already, and we're proposing on going to a public hearing where we can announce the preferred alternative in spring of 2026. The PD&E is ongoing. As I think you previously saw, the design is actually funded now in the LRTP in 2030, but FDOT is actually trying to do part of the design in-house so that we're not waiting until those years for this project to go to design. And David Turley is our project manager. Unfortunately, he has a doctor's appointment and he could not be here. And this is his contact information. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Sure.
In that you're doing the design in-house to accelerate it, how does that rate with respect to the priority given this one compared to the Burst or widening? I guess, Dawn, that's better addressed by you.
So both of those are in the priorities right now. I will say one of the things with the adoption of the long-range plan is we will be bringing back the list because there are projects that are coming off like Metro to relook at that priority order. But the big picture of that is that design's underway with Burnt Store, so the PD&E could be signed off. To get the PD&E signed off, they're going to have to do something to get the design kicked off here. But meanwhile, the construction is a higher priority on Burnt Store Road, if you will look at it that way. The other thing I should bring up too, from the discussion we had at the last meeting, in the next meeting, January, we will be talking about the sales tax. I was having some discussion this morning with Pete Whitten about some of the collections of it, and also with Derek about some of the legal sides of it, then dive it into what projects might be covered by that with the scenarios that we talked about at the last meeting.
Anything else? Bill?
On this picture, just so I'm sure I'm looking at it right, are we looking north on 41? And that diversion lane is cutting over to then turn left onto Gladiolus?
North,
6 Mile Cypress.
North is this way. This is, yeah, it doesn't play that. It doesn't have a code. Yeah, the north is facing this way. So this is Colonial and this is 6 Mile Cypress. So the I-75 interchange would be just off the screen.
Do you want to look at the other graphic that was 41?
I was thinking this was the proposal for 41 and 6 Mile Cypress, this picture.
No, it would be, so here, north is looking up, so this is 41, and this is 6 Mile Cypress, so State Road on that side, County Road on this side.
So 6 Mile Cypress coming around the curve and then heading east, that would be a continuous right?
Yes. Unless there's pedestrians who want to cross, you see a crosswalk, that is strictly for pedestrians, push the button, and it triggers the pedestrian phase. There was a lot of discussion about bicycle safety. I did want to add that, for the last 10, 20 years, the emphasis has been adding bicycle lanes. Here, there is so much traffic and there's so much conflicting movement that as you approach the intersection, we actually move the bicycles off the road onto the shared use path. So we actually widen the sidewalk so that they're not conflicting with all the turning movements that are happening on the intersection.
And do we not see westbound traffic approaching the intersection needing some type of relief turning left to head south on 41?
Yeah. So when we started this study, we did our traffic counts, and purpose of that was to identify what is the highest turning movements, because you want to give them the first treatment. The highest turning movement was northbound to northbound left turn to go south on Gladiolus Drive. That is actually in the morning, and then in the evening is the reverse movement. So the other movement was lower. So we first tried to see, okay, and as you can see, in order to do that, we are impacting part of Lowe's. The dashed red line is the right-of-way that we do have to buy.
Saying Michael G. Rip takes some of that left turn too, because you come to that first before you get to 41. So if you're heading south, you can take that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else from the board with questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll open up to public comment on this item. Seeing none, we'll conclude. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. Moving on, we'll review the FDOT draft tentative work program for fiscal year 2027 to 2031.
I want to save it. Okay, I'm going to shrink it. Yes, we're going to present this. They already had the public meeting. We do appreciate FDOT working with staff with us, because I remember last year we were standing here and saying at some point, I can't remember exactly if it was a year, but that the carbon reduction funds had gone away. They've worked in some of the sidewalks in Cape Coral had gone away. Those have been added back in. I think one or two of them might even be quicker than they were in the previous one to address those issues. So we appreciate working with FDOT on that. Go ahead, Ron.
So I'm going to show you highlights of projects from the new draft tentative work program from Lee County. When you're talking about new additions, there is the Lee County Advanced Traffic Management System Phase 3, which is basically you're computerizing the traffic signal system that we have in Lee County, meaning, you are upgrading intersections, you are upgrading what you call the cabinet, the controllers, providing dynamic messaging systems, putting cameras on the intersection. But the amount that you see, almost $4 million, that's only a partial amount to the actual amount, the total cost, which is more in the range of maybe $11 million, $12 million. That's actually the FDOT share. So between the MPO and Lee County POCC, we have to come up with the rest of the funding. And that's consistent with our MPO state and federal priority number 8. Then there's also the Cape Coral signal retiming. That is for $261,000. The last time that they did retiming for the specific corridors for which the signal retiming is going to be done, they include Cape Coral Parkway with, I think it is in the range of like 11 intersections, sorry. You have the Santa Barbara Boulevard with 11 intersections, and then you have the Nicholas Parkway with its intersections. So we're talking about signal timing those. The last time that was done was probably almost 7 years ago. And then we have the State Road 78 project that we kind of talked at the beginning of this meeting about the widening from I-75 to 31. So $7 million is for the design phase that brings planning consistency so that they can complete the PD&E study. And then you have the San Carlos Boulevard sidewalk. We asked for the construction funding for this particular segment from Cali to Gulf Point, but FDOT came back and said there's a need for some right-of-way acquisition, and so that's what's been funded, $320,000. And then the Cape Coral, the next 5 projects basically are projects that fell out of the work program. They were actually funded, but they were removed, and now they have been restored. So I don't want to go into those unless you have any specific questions of any of those 5 projects. Then the last one is actually, we are fortunate enough to get a grant award from Florida Department of Transportation but that includes actually federal funding for freight, and that's the Central Fort Myers Freight Mobility Study. New additions also includes funding for sidewalks that are going to benefit the Three Oaks Parkway Elementary School and the Harnsmars Elementary School. These are both projects which are located in unincorporated Lee County. Design and construction for each of the projects. Projects that have been deferred includes your shared use path for the Pine Island Road. That's the design phase. And that is the portion to the east, basically from Metlusa East to Veterans Parkway. And that's been moved out to 2030. And then on State Road 82, within the limits of City of Fort Myers, there is one segment, the only segment where there is a gap in sidewalk from Michigan Link to Ortiz. The cost has actually gone up, and that's for, what you see is the construction, the design phase. The design phase has been moved to 2031. But the way we are looking at this particular project, we feel that the developer has to come and actually build that particular sidewalk. And then on US 41 sidewalk in North Fort Myers from Terra Boulevard to Charlotte County line, there's almost $2 million. The cost has actually gone up, and the project has been deferred to 2029. And the project completed is the Metro Parkway continuous flow intersection, or basically you call it the deferred left, or is the same kind of intersection treatment that you have at 6 Mile and Colonial. So that project has been removed, and there's also, this particular project also includes the widening component from 4 to 6 lanes. That is also something, that probably is going to be removed from the work program. So going to our MPO priorities, this is something that is familiar with you because we brought it to you for adoption. And basically, where I have shown the check mark, those are the projects from this particular list of priorities that actually got funded. So partial funding for the Lee County Traffic Operations Center, and then the countywide ATMS, I already spoke about it, and then also the State Road 78 I-75 to State Road 31, the design that has been funded. And then when you look at your multimodal box fund priority list, that is the list where you identify projects for bike ped improvements, small intersection improvements, transit improvements, and all that. You see a bunch of projects that got funded. And these are the two Safe Route to School program-funded projects that I was mentioning earlier that benefits the two schools in unincorporated Lee County. This one is a Three Oaks Elementary School with access from Estero Parkway. The lines in yellow basically shows where the gaps are on Cypress View Drive. And on your right-hand side, this is in Lehigh Acres, and it benefits the Harnsmars Middle School. The line in red basically is what the proposed sidewalk is. And finally, I mentioned about the Central Fort Myers Freight Mobility Study area. So this has some bike ped components to it also, because while we are going to be doing this study, we're also going to look at complete street ideas, how to make it safer for bicyclists and pedestrians, and then also intersection improvement, also resiliency, because some of the pavement infrastructure, they were underwater, they got flooded, and so there may be some damage that needs to be fixed. And then also it includes proposal for identifying any kind of truck parking. So that's all I had.
Questions? Bill.
On
the signal timing for Cape Coral, I know you mentioned Santa Barbara and Nicholas in those corridors. I didn't hear signal timing on Cape Coral Parkway as it relates to the changes I'm sure that will come about with the replacement of the bridge and the widening of the bridge. Is the signal timing that's involved with the bridge included in the bridge budget and funding, or is it something that should be accommodated in this?
Now, Cape Coral Parkway is actually in the included in that signal timing study, but it's from Chiquita Boulevard to Vincent's. So then you have Del Prado, and I guess Del Prado has to be done with like with the what do you call the bridge replacement and all that. But that is coming further down the road. But I guess like we'll have to work with city staff, your city staff, and we have to see if it is also going to involve Del Prado Boulevard. I mean, in the interim, you have to have something fixed because, like I said before, the signal timing for these corridors, including Cape Coral Parkway, the last time it was done was, like almost 7 years now. And so, all the traffic signal that is included on Cape Coral Parkway from Vincent's to Chiquita Boulevard, yeah, that's included.
Yeah, I think that the concern or the point of interest, at least, is from Del Prado, including the Del Prado intersection, all the way through Coronado and Santa Barbara, the drifting traffic flow, and maybe Commissioner Hammond, maybe it might know if signal timing is included in that bridge replacement plan as it relates to the additional traffic that's going to be coming in and going out as a result of those 6 lanes. Oh, okay. And the main point of my question is to make sure that if it should be included here, that we consider that now before we ingrain this in stone.
Good morning, Rob Price with Lee County DOT. Signal retiming happens as a part of every one of our major CIP construction projects. That particular project is also going to be piggybacked with the city's removal of the on-street parking there, so we can have the continuous 6 lanes on Cape Parkway. There will be significant signal retiming that will go in as a part of all of those projects so that when we open up the road and open up the bridge, we are flowing as good as we can be.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Commissioner?
Just one question. I love the 5-year work program. I think it's fantastic. Everything that's budgeted in here is wonderful. I have a question. Who coordinates to make sure that we're not doing 2 projects on the same routes at the same time? So for instance, like if you work on 41 and maybe the alternate route is Business 41, well, you probably wouldn't want to do a project on Business 41 and 41 at the same time or something like that. I'm just trying to give an example. How do we make sure that when we're doing a project on one area, we have alternate routes that are going to be clear and free flowing so that you can still move around the county?
I'll say there's lots of internal collaboration, as you can imagine. Through the years, we have experienced those overlaps and redundancies. And the contrary, the notion of having an orphan. 2 things are going on and you leave something out. So it really becomes a responsibility of the program area managers who understand the resources. We've evolved tremendously. The ability now to, from a GIS overlapping layer perspective, we have the ability to look ahead not only at the fiscal year plan, but also we're able to essentially align construction durations so that we can see when projects are going to start and finish. And a lot of effort goes into planning and making sure that we collaborate and coordinate those efforts.
Perfect. That answers my question, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure that, while these are great projects and while they're going on, obviously there will be temporary pain in those areas, but alternative routes. You guys have probably seen it, right? There's a funny meme that goes around on social media. It's a bunch of guys wearing hard hats, and they're like, you see those drivers taking an alternate route over there? Let's start a project there too. And so we don't want to be in that situation, and I appreciate you guys and the coordination you put in towards that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll open it up to public comment. Any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to other business, which is public comments on items not on the agenda. I have a card from Marcia Ellis.
Great, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Marcia Ellis, for the record. I'm just going to double back to my previous comments about developer-funded projects such as the Kingston Road. There are also reimbursement clauses oftentimes in those agreements, as well as I have some skepticism regarding the safety stats on bike and ped, mainly because I think marginalized communities, they may not be out and as visible and active, and there could be some underlying factors bringing those stats down. And also, I'm a little concerned about who gains from those stats levels being down. Now, I'm going to start out access to and mobility, expand our public land networks. This is key to our health in this community and our economic vitality. So we know that there are many, many people who are involved in bringing in better outcomes, health outcomes in our community and opportunities for recreation and tourism. There's a recent study, I included a copy that I gave to all of y'all from Stanford University that has really looked at access to parks as being central to these positive health outcomes. And I think that when we're talking about our networks, we need to be finding ways to link together our public lands and move away from some of these, minimize the time on these transportation corridors, because really it's access that makes a difference, particularly in the highlights I provided that parks need to be accessible to everyone, not just higher income white populations, that results of having access to mobility are really equigenic, and that the greatest gains are in marginalized populations. I know that lots of folks, and Bonita in particular, have been supportive putting our money behind the Burt Rail Trail, which is about 15 miles. I'm not going to waste your time going over these stats, but they are included for you. And one of the opportunities I think that may be overlooked is the opportunity for these rail cars. And so these rail carts are in different places. We could bode well with this because we're in a good climate. The one in California is open year-round. Here we go. A little bit more about you see people having fun. It's nice, isn't it? Kids having fun, tourists taking this opportunity. I think that could be part of the BERT experience as well. And here are some stats that talk a little bit more about the specifics with a couple of examples. And this is what we want, right? We want a happy, healthy Lee County. We want our kids to be safe, and we want tourist. These are our top tourist selections by TripAdvisor. Notice how we have 6 Mile Cypress and Manatee Park. And what I want to point out is that our conservation lands are really at risk here. We have to protect them.
Thank you, Marcia.
We're putting $65 million.
Marcia, you've had your 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you, sir. Per year, and I just want to make sure that we rethink our networks and how we can connect them. I thank you
Do we
so
have
much.
any other public
Thank
comment?
you, sir.
Seeing none, we have a Lee Trans/TD report.
Good morning, Kelly Fernandez from Leetran. I have a very brief update for you this morning related to our services over the last couple of months. Our fixed route ridership for October and November was 284,404 trips and trending upward with a 1.5% increase in ridership over last year. Seasonal service began on November 20th, which resumed our tram service on Fort Myers Beach and the trolley service downtown Fort Myers, along with some additional route efficiency and connection improvements. Our paratransit services continue to serve about 550 to 600 passenger trips daily, and this includes our transportation disadvantaged trips. We expect trip demand to continue to increase to about 700 trips on peak days in the coming weeks through spring. We've implemented our new paratransit scheduling software at the end of October, and this dynamic software has resulted in on-time performance improvements to an average of 90% on time. Although still in the early stages of use, we are already seeing positive effects for our Passport clients. And our Mobility on Demand services transported an average of 5,000 passengers monthly in October and November. 3,600 of those passengers were in Bonita Springs, 1,400 passengers in Lehigh Acres. In addition, 2,400 passengers were served in Lehigh Acres on the Route 515 for a total of 3,800 passengers. And that's what I have for you today. We'll have a full project update for you at your next meeting in January.
Any board questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
We'll move on to an FDOT report.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcellus Evans with FDOT. Just wanted to say happy holidays to everyone. There's no official FDOT report. Everything has been discussed here in this meeting. Any questions, we are here still. Thank you.
Any questions for Marcellus? Seeing none, go ahead, Rachel.
Where are you guys at with like your EVTOLs? I know you guys did programming around the state, and I thought I saw that maybe Miami-Dade was going live with that.
Still, of course, the conversation's still under development. I know we are aggressively developing policy and working through those metrics. So if you ask me probably first of the year when I come back, I can give you a little more detail. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Okay, the next meeting is January 23rd. I believe that'll be the last one I get a chair. And by coincidence, it's also National King Day, so no presents will be accepted for obvious reasons. Any other announcements, Don?
Just one. The survey consolidation study ends today, so if you haven't answered it, please go in and answer it. We were a little low on the Lee County side in the city of Fort Myers, which they're not here to hear it. But I don't know who's responded. I just know by jurisdictions who's a little higher, who's a little lower. So if you could fill it out by the end of the day, that'd be appreciated.
Any information and distribution items?
No, sir.
Seeing none, we'll move on with a personal note. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy Hanukkah, Mele Kalikimaka, and Happy New Year. So with that, we'll adjourn at 10:57. Thank you.